The two officers stood at my gate, hands resting on their belts, faces shadowed beneath stiff-brimmed hats. "You've got 10 minutes to vacate," the taller one barked, waving a court order that looked too crisp, too clean, too manufactured. I didn't move. Instead, I noticed the details: wrong badge style, polished dress shoes, no body cams, and a patrol car with silent lights that didn't match any county unit I'd ever seen. Behind them, across the fence, Linda Prescott watched through binoculars, barely containing her anticipation. I stepped back slowly, heart steady. Something about this felt rehearsed. Too rehearsed. The shorter officer rapped on my gate again, harder this time, the hollow clang echoing across the property like a warning shot. "Sir, failure to comply will result in immediate arrest," he shouted, voice cracking on the last word. That crack told me everything. They were nervous. Real officers don't sound nervous. I lifted my phone casually, pretending to scroll, when in reality I'd already triggered a silent upload to cloud storage. The court order fluttered in the wind, its seal slightly pixelated around the edges. A bad print job, a fake authority wrapped in real intimidation. Across the fence, Linda Prescott paced in slow, tight circles beside the HOA playground, her phone pressed to her ear as she whispered instructions. A few residents lingered nearby, watching with the kind of eager discomfort you see before a neighborhood scandal explodes. Then, faint but growing, I heard the distant rise of real sirens. Not the staged, off-brand intimidation these two brought, but the actual county wail that meant backup was minutes away. The taller cop's jaw tightened. "She said we had more time," he muttered. "If only I knew what was coming next." I didn't buy this land to make enemies. I bought it because I needed silence, real silence, the kind you can't get in a tech office with recycled air and managers who call panic sessions scrum meetings. After 12 years in Dallas chasing promotions I didn't want, I was done. My father used to say land was the one thing in life that stayed honest, but I watched him lose ours when a developer teamed up with an HOA and pushed a community improvement initiative right through his boundary line. They buried him in paperwork until he couldn't fight anymore. He signed the sale contract with shaking hands. I never forgot that look. Maybe that's why this 5-acre patch outside Willow Creek Estates felt like a promise. Scruffy mesquite trees, uneven clay soil, an old barbed wire fence leaning like it had survived a war, none of it mattered. The county plat map showed one thing that mattered more than anything. It was mine. No HOA jurisdiction, no common area easement creeping through the property, just clean boundaries and a future greenhouse waiting to be built. My cabin was small, hand-built from a prefab kit, but it was the first place in years where I slept without dreaming of overdue emails. I'd wake up at dawn, drink gas station coffee on the porch, and listen to coyotes singing their off-key morning anthem. Across the fence, Willow Creek woke up in perfect synchronization. Sprinklers at 6 a.m., identical SUVs backing out of identical driveways, and retirees power walking in matching neon visors. Their world was manicured. Mine was raw. I liked the contrast. Then Linda Prescott marched into my life. It was day 3. I was standing in the middle of my field with a surveyor's map flapping against the wind when I heard heels crunching through dry grass. No one wears heels on clay unless they're making a point. She approached like she owned the horizon. Pale blue blazer, polished clipboard with the Willow Creek Estates logo, hair so precisely sprayed it might have been classified as infrastructure. 2 board members followed. Mark, tall and uncomfortable, and Hannah Ruiz, who looked like she wished she had stayed home. Linda stopped right at the fence, not an inch more. "I'm Linda Prescott, president of the Willow Creek Estates Homeowners Association," she announced, like she expected a standing ovation. I offered a polite, "Mason Carter. I'm not part of the HOA." Her smile tightened. "This land visually impacts our community. Any construction requires aesthetic compliance review." I showed her the county parcel map on my tablet. My lot highlighted in gold, her HOA boundary in blue clear separation, no overlap. She didn't look. Instead, she scanned my cabin like it was graffiti someone needed to report. "The community has standards," she said. "We expect those standards to be respected." Her voice had the same tone the developer used on my father before they took our land. That tone, polished with false authority, was something I knew too well. I stayed calm. "You don't have jurisdiction here. I verified everything with the county and my attorney." Hannah's eyes flicked toward me. Something like guilt crossed her face. When Linda turned to leave, Hannah lingered half a second. "Just keep records," she whispered. That night, I installed my first security camera. Over the next few days, I learned that Linda had a talent for being everywhere. At the HOA gate, behind a row of hydrangeas, walking her dog exactly when I went outside. Her gaze followed me like a drone with pearls. I told myself it was harmless. Neighbors get curious, boundaries get blurry. But then the first envelope appeared on my gate, and I knew in that slow, sinking way, a storm is coming long before the clouds gather, that Linda Prescott hadn't just noticed me. She'd decided I was a problem. And problems, in her world, got corrected. Ever so. The first escalation came quietly, wrapped in a white envelope with a gold HOA seal that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. It was taped dead center on my gate, perfectly level, like Linda Prescott couldn't tolerate even a crooked threat. The cardstock was thick, high-end, unnecessarily dramatic HOA intimidation disguised as stationery. I photographed it, peeled it off, and opened it inside the cabin. Notice of violation. Unauthorized structure visible from community boundary. Failure to maintain landscaping consistent with Willow Creek standards. Unapproved agricultural preparation. Agricultural preparation? I dug 3 soil test holes and set 1 compost bin in the shade. Apparently, that was now an existential threat to their property values. I scanned everything, filed it under evidence. Day 7, and emailed the packet to my lawyer, Aaron Patel. His reply came within minutes. They have no jurisdiction. Ignore the letter, but document everything. Document everything. That became my mantra. 2 days later, I spotted 2 HOA residents on the other side of the fence with clipboards, snapping photos like they were documenting a crime scene. When they saw me, one said, "This is for the community record." "What record?" I asked. Neither answered. I didn't need one. I already suspected the answer. Later that afternoon, I heard engines and chatter drifting from the HOA clubhouse. I followed the fence line until I reached a small gap between the slats, just big enough to hear through. Inside, Linda stood under a projector like she was hosting a TED Talk titled, "How to Weaponize Your HOA." My cabin was blown up on the screen, overexposed, zoomed, and labeled Phase 1 of Unauthorized Development. Residents gasped dramatically, like they were reacting to a stage play. "This operation," Linda said, tapping her clicker, "could bring pests, traffic, noise pollution, and structural inconsistencies to our community." Operation, noise pollution, structural inconsistencies, all to describe my one-room cabin and a shovel. "Can we stop him?" someone asked. Linda sighed deeply, theatrically. "Only if we act as a united community. Tonight we begin a formal petition to the county zoning board." Pens clicked. Signatures flowed. People lined up like they were volunteering for a noble cause instead of signing a harassment campaign. I recorded the entire meeting from my hiding spot. Back at the cabin, I saved the audio file as evidence. Day 9. Public defamation and petition manufacturing. Aaron called 20 minutes later. "This is targeted. She's building a paper trail designed to make you look like a public nuisance. And it's all fabricated." "Yes, but HOAs know most people fold before the truth catches up." I wasn't folding. The second escalation arrived with government plates on a county vehicle. A zoning officer stepped out, clipboard in hand, looking exhausted. "Sir," she said, "we received a complaint that you're constructing an unpermitted agricultural facility. I haven't built anything yet." That's what I suspected. I walked her around the property, showing my plans, permits, and zoning classification. She nodded repeatedly. "This complaint came from Willow Creek Estates?" I asked. She didn't answer immediately, but her sigh gave her away. "They're enthusiastic," she said diplomatically. "Just keep records." Everyone kept telling me to record everything. It worried me that so many people felt the need. The third escalation didn't come as a letter or an officer. It came at 2:47 a.m. My surveillance system pinged. Motion near the fence line. I opened the feed. 2 figures wearing dark hoodies moved through the trees. Bolt cutters glinted under moonlight. They clipped the fence with practiced ease and stepped onto my land like they'd rehearsed it. One carried a spray can, the other a toolkit. I watched, teeth clenched, as they sprayed "No Farm" on the cabin wall in uneven neon red. Then they walked to my irrigation test line and twisted valves until the system sputtered and hissed. They yanked up my survey stakes 3 inches each, just enough to distort the boundary. One figure bent down under the floodlight. I recognized the posture instantly, shoulders pulled back, chin lifted like she was posing for a brochure photo. Linda. Even without seeing her face, the way she carried herself was unmistakable. 10 minutes later, they slipped back through the cut fence and disappeared into the HOA shadows. By sunrise, my evidence file had grown by another 40 megabytes. Deputy Callahan showed up mid-morning, studying the footage with a grim expression. "You want to press charges?" "Yes." "Good, because this is no longer an HOA dispute. This is criminal trespass, vandalism, and attempted boundary manipulation." He paused. "But understand something. She won't stop just because we file a report." Who does she think she is?" "Someone who's never been told no," he said. The fourth escalation came disguised as concern. A fire marshal stopped by, responding to a call about flammables stored improperly. False. Animal control showed up next about unlicensed livestock. Also false. Then county code enforcement arrived regarding hazardous waste disposal. Completely fabricated. Each time I showed them around. Each time they apologized. Each time I logged it. This wasn't random. This was a harassment strategy. A pressure cooker. Turn up the legal heat until the target sells. I recognized it. My father had lived it. The fifth escalation was bold. I found a line of bright orange stakes hammered several feet into my land, marked HOA perimeter. A teenager was hammering one in when I walked up. "Miss Prescott said the map was wrong," he muttered. I pulled the stake out while recording. "This is my property line. You're trespassing." Linda appeared like smoke, her voice sharp as a blade. "You are interfering with community boundaries." "No," I said. "You're trying to redraw them." Her eyes flashed. "You don't understand the kind of influence I have. And you don't understand how much documentation I have." She turned and stormed off. My phone buzzed. Aaron again. "She's escalating because she thinks she can intimidate you into leaving." "She's wrong." "Good," he said. "Because next, she'll get desperate." He didn't know how right he was. Because the sixth escalation, the most dangerous one, was already forming in Linda's mind. A plan involving uniforms, badges, a fake court order, and two men who thought a $100 costume could pass for authority. Everything so far had been warm-up. The real war hadn't even begun. The morning the fake cruiser rolled onto my dirt driveway, something in the air already felt wrong. Too still, too staged. Even the HOA dogs, usually barking at leaves, were silent. I watched from my porch as the black and white vehicle eased to a stop. At first glance it looked official, but only at first glance. Then the details snapped into focus. The decals were the wrong font. The light bar was an aftermarket model, and the two officers stepping out wore uniforms so fresh they still had factory creases. "Mr. Carter," the taller one called, raising a folded document. "Court order, property evacuation, 10 minutes to comply." 10 minutes. Exactly the amount of time someone gives when they're hoping you panic. I didn't move. Instead, I studied them the way my father once studied the developer who stole his land quietly, carefully, knowing the real danger hid in the small details. "Badge numbers?" I asked. The shorter one stiffened. "Sir, we need you to cooperate." "Badge numbers," I repeated. They exchanged a look. No real officer hesitates to give their badge number. The taller one thrust the court order at me. I scanned it quickly. Wrong case format. Wrong county seal. Judge's name misspelled. No clerk's stamp. A forged legal document printed on cheap office paper pretending to be authority. I stepped back toward my cabin. "Let me get my wallet," I said. Inside, I called 911 immediately. "There are two men impersonating officers," I whispered. "Fake cruiser. Fake order. I'm being told to vacate my property." The dispatcher didn't hesitate. "Sir, stay inside and keep recording. Real deputies are on their way." Outside, the fakes were getting anxious. "She said we'd have more time," the shorter one muttered. "She." I lifted my phone and zoomed toward the HOA playground. Linda Prescott stood behind a row of boxwoods, binoculars pressed to her eyes, phone clamped to her ear, watching the entire operation unfold like she was directing a stage play, waiting for the moment I broke, the moment I didn't. Then, the distant wail of real sirens began to rise. The taller fake officer froze. The shorter one whispered, "We need to go. Now." But the sirens were already too close. 3 sheriff's vehicles barreled down the county road and boxed them in. Real deputies spilled out weathered boots, body cams, proper belts, real authority. Deputy Callahan was among them, fury tightening his jaw. He didn't waste a second. "Hands where we can see them? Drop any equipment?" The fake officers panicked instantly. One raised his hands. The other blurted, "It was just a job. She hired us." A deputy yanked open the trunk of the fake cruiser. Inside, costume uniforms, a stack of printed eviction scripts, a binder labeled Operation Compliance, and 2 contracts. Contracts signed by Linda Prescott on HOA letterhead, spelling out payment, instructions, and the goal. Remove subject by any means necessary. Residents had gathered at the HOA gate, now phones out, stunned, whispering as deputies marched across the property line. A few seconds later, they returned with Linda in handcuffs. Her composure had evaporated. "This is a misunderstanding," she screeched. "I was protecting my community. He's destabilizing the neighborhood." Her voice cracked, shrill, and panicked, nothing like the smug authority she wore like a crown at HOA meetings. A deputy read her charges aloud. Impersonation of a peace officer, conspiracy, fraud, attempted unlawful eviction, trespass, harassment. Residents stared, mouths open. Some stepped back, as if she carried a contagious disease. Some looked away, ashamed. A few still glared at me as if the truth was inconvenient. Deputy Callahan approached me. "Mr. Carter, your documentation, the recordings, the letters, the footage made this airtight. Without it, this could have gone very differently." I nodded, suddenly exhausted. At the sheriff's office, I spent hours with detectives, laying out my evidence in careful order violations, false complaints, boundary interference, nighttime trespassing, and now, a staged eviction using fake cops. Detective Morales flipped through my organized file, page by page. "This isn't HOA drama, Mr. Carter. This is a coordinated campaign to force you off legally protected land. She built an entire operation around harassment." Through the glass, I saw Linda in an interrogation room, shoulders hunched, her lawyer arguing with the detectives. She no longer looked powerful. She looked cornered. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something close to relief. Not victory, but finally, the truth had weight again. The days after Linda's arrest felt strangely quiet, too quiet, like the world had paused to recalibrate. The HOA that once watched me like a hawk now avoided eye contact. Garage doors stayed closed longer. Dog walkers crossed the street instead of passing my gate. Even the morning sprinklers seemed hesitant, sputtering on a few seconds late as if unsure whether they still had permission. I didn't gloat, didn't wave, didn't glare. I simply kept working. By the time the sheriff's office called me in for a formal victim statement, I'd already built a routine around repairs, soil prep, and reviewing my security feeds. At the station, Detective Morales greeted me with a stack of documents nearly 2 inches thick, my evidence woven together with their investigation. "Most people don't fight back like this," she said. "You built a stronger case than some prosecutors." I gave my statement, answered questions, clarified timelines. Across the hall, through a glass window, I saw Linda being interviewed by her attorney. She looked smaller, hair unstyled, blazer replaced with a county-issued sweater, posture slumped like someone who'd finally realized the ground beneath her wasn't solid. But there was something else in her eyes. Not remorse, not fear. Just disbelief, like she couldn't fathom a world where her authority didn't automatically win. The DA warned me the criminal case would take months, maybe longer. Felonies don't move fast, especially when the defendant has money, a reputation, and a lawyer who bills by the eyebrow raise. But for the first time since this started, I had the momentum. Back home, I refocused on something that made sense. The wall. A physical boundary. Solid. Unambiguous. Something that didn't bend to HOA whims or forged documents. The contractor poured the foundation first, a deep trench of rebar and concrete tracing the exact survey line like a permanent underline. Over the next week, the wall rose panel by panel, 10 feet high, smooth and white, catching the sun like a blank canvas. Residents gathered along the HOA side, whispering behind manicured hedges. Some watched with guilt, some with curiosity, some with barely disguised irritation, as if the wall was an accusation written in concrete. Maybe it was. Hannah Ruiz approached one afternoon, hands tucked into her cardigan sleeves. "I want to apologize," she said quietly, "for not speaking up sooner, for letting her convince us you were a threat. You weren't the one cutting fences at 3 amperes. I said. "No," she agreed, "but silence helps people like her. I won't be silent anymore." She told me the HOA board had removed Linda unanimously. They were rewriting bylaws, adding oversight mechanisms, requiring external legal review before sending formal notices. It was a start. Before she left, Hannah handed me a printed letter, an official apology from the HOA board. The signatures at the bottom wavered, some neat, some shaky, all equally uncomfortable. I folded the letter carefully and set it aside. Apologies don't undo damage, but they do plant seeds. When the wall was completed, I planted jasmine vines and native climbing roses along my side. Over time, I wanted the stark concrete to disappear beneath green and gold, a living boundary instead of a hostile one. My greenhouse followed a curved steel frame covered in translucent panels that glowed warm at night. Inside, the temperature held steady. Rows of young plants pushed upward, reaching toward the promise of something better. One evening, as I was pruning tomato seedlings, a letter arrived from the county jail. Linda. Her handwriting was neat, almost fragile. She didn't admit guilt lawyers never allow that. But she wrote, "I didn't realize how far I'd crossed until I was already too far to turn back." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't an excuse. It was something in between, and maybe that was all she had left. I placed the letter in my evidence box, not out of spite, but out of understanding. Some stories don't end cleanly. Some people don't get redemption arcs. Some never realize the damage they cause until the world finally says enough. A few weeks later, as I walked the length of the wall at dusk light from the greenhouse spilling across the ground like amber water, a county vehicle pulled up to my gate. A deputy stepped out, envelope in hand. "From the DA," he said. "You'll want to read it." After he left, I stared at the envelope resting on my kitchen table. Inside was news that could tilt everything. Plea deal, trial date, dropped charges, new charges, who knew? But I didn't open it. Not yet. Instead, I stepped outside again and listened to the land as night settled around me. Crickets filled the silence. The jasmine vines rustled softly. And somewhere across the wall, Willow Creek sprinklers clicked on, precise as always. The boundary between us felt clearer than ever, solid, visible, earned. The fight might not be over. The legal battle might stretch on. Reputation, restitution, consequences all still unfolding. But for the first time in months, standing in the glow of the greenhouse and the shadow of the wall, I felt something honest. Peace. For now. And whatever the DA's letter held, justice, compromise, complication could wait until morning.